Hello, I'm an old fart, and I have a guilty pleasure. I like knives. I'm not an expert or an official representative of anything or anybody in any way. I just like knives. For a little over a year now, throughout the COVID lockdown, you've been joining me on a tour through my collection of small folding pocket knives. Thanks for the company. Today, we're going to look at a knife that isn't any of those things. Well, I guess it is folding. We're going to look at a knife that really doesn't belong in my collection, but it's here, at least temporarily. So, a little story on why. Um, Somebody asked me quite a while ago, why don't you ever review knives that you don't like? And I explained, and back in some video, I don't remember which one, I explained, well, I'm not a reviewer. Um, I'm a collector. And so I don't show you knives I don't like because I don't have any knives I don't like. Why would they be in my collection? Well, today's knife is an exception. I made a mistake. Many manufacturers will take a known knife and then they list it with a slightly different model number to indicate a different finish. So, for example, here's a Benchmade 940. This is the traditional green aluminum one. And then the 940-1 is the tarted up version with the carbon fiber scales and more interesting steel and so on. So that's a fairly common thing among manufacturers. And I thought I saw that. I have this there we are, zero tolerance 450 Sinkovich, all titanium model. Reviewed this quite a long time ago. Like this knife a lot. I always thought that it would be even nicer if it was tarted up a bit, maybe with some carbon fiber scales. And then I saw a knife listed on eBay, a 0452 CF. And I stupidly assumed that that was a 450 with carbon fiber scales. A different model number just represented the scale change. And I didn't read the specs in detail. I usually do, but I was distracted and rushed, and so I made the classic eBay error. I did a knee-jerk bid. Now, I'm often saved by from my own stupidity on eBay by not winning, but this one, even though I bid a rather low price, I won. And I guess that's because most of the other people out there knew what this knife was and didn't bid on it. So anyway, it arrived. Here it is. This is the 0452 CF. It is indeed CF, but when I opened the box, I said, holy crap, it's huge. It is much larger than the 0450. So, in fact, it is the largest knife in my collection other than my fixed blades. It is way too large for me. I don't like it just because it is so damn big. But I'm going to show it to you in case anybody out there does want a huge folder, and this is probably a good one. I will eventually sell this knife. I imagine it's a good one. It'll make somebody happy, but it is very much not for me. I've kept it this far for two reasons. One is I'm lazy, and packaging up and photographing and listing a knife to sell it is work, and I'm lazy. And the other is sort of as penance to remind me to pay more attention, or more of this may happen. So anyway, let's go through the formalities. So formally, this is a zero tolerance Sinkovich design 0452 CF. It is a side flipper running on bearings. Nice flip. It is a traditional titanium frame lock, has a large hardened lock insert. The size is stupid. It is 236 millimeters long, which is 1.3, 1.4 pocket calculators. And by comparison, well, I'm not going to go through a lot of the knives in my collection because for every single one of them, I would just have to say it's larger than that. I collect small knives. So just two things. What was my largest folder, and I said it was too large, and I didn't like it, was this, the Monterey Bay Knives XLC. This is bigger than this knife that was already too large. If I look at the biggest knife in my collection that I don't think is too large, it would be the large Sebenza class knife. And again, as you can see, it's considerably larger than that. So it is just stupidly big. Being big, it is, of course, heavy. There's a lot of mass there. It's 122 grams. Doesn't seem as heavy because I think I'm unconsciously sort of assessing it against its size, and it's so damn big. Imagine how heavy it would be if the other half was also titanium. Anyway, the blade is huge. is 4.1 inches long. That's rather more than 3 inches that matters in some places. S35VN, good steel. Drop point, I like drop point blades. Because it's so large, there's lots of room for a finger choil there, so you can easily choke up if you're doing fine cutting. There's a thumb jimping to handle that. Now, I don't know what kind of fine cutting you would do with something this size, but you can. The body is interesting. The body is a titanium slab on one side, carbon fiber slab on the other side. There's no lining in there, so that's just solid carbon fiber on that side. There is a clip. When I first saw this clip, it looks so small in comparison to the rest of the knife that I assumed that this wasn't the original clip. Somebody had broken it or bent it and replaced it with this one, but looking at this thing in photos, this is in fact the original clip. There is a lanyard hole. The lanyard hole is interesting. It is counterbored, both sides, as though it was meant to accept a liner of some kind, but there is no liner. And ambidextrousness, well, being a side flipper, of course. Opening, yes, lots of room to open it with either hand. For the lock, we'll say no. I mean, it's a frame lock, and those are much easier with one hand. But what I will say with this one, because it's so big, there is lots of room. So I imagine for a lefty that wouldn't be a difficult thing to handle. The clip, yes, the clip is switchable. You see there's mounting holes here. Now at first I thought, well, that's odd. If you mounted the clip there, you'd be just, screwing a thread into solid carbon fiber. That wouldn't be very secure. But looking at that closely with a light and a magnifier, there is actually a threaded steel liner in those holes. So you can move the clip and it would work. Manufactured, according to the website, it's manufactured in Oregon. Tualatin, I don't know how you pronounce that, Oregon. So for people who care about that, it is. So let's do some likes and dislikes. Like I said, I don't like this knife in the sense that it's not for me, but I've got to admit that it is well done. It has some good points, so I'll just go through some of those. It's well made, good centering, and the blade is well ground. It's nicely symmetric grind, and I appreciate that. Straightforward, reliable side flip, and a good amount of detent. It holds it firmly, but it's not a struggle to open like I've complained the Monterey Bay XLC. I find that hard to open. This one is slightly less detent and more jimping on the flipper tab, so pleasantly easy to open, and that's good. A very solid lock. It's a huge lock bar with a big steel insert, and there's lots of room to unlock it. No trouble at all getting the meat of my thumb in there. And when closing it, the flipper tab is a good finger guard. See, it's stopping on my thumb well before my thumb's in any danger from the blade. So I like that. Oh, and I should mention, by the way, lots of room for cutting things. I could put 5 or 6 fingers in there, so certainly 4's no trouble at all. So there are things to admire about this well-made knife. What I don't like, well, really one main thing is it is too damn big. It's very threatening looking, both from the size and from the appearance. It's not the only thing I don't like, but that's kind of the overriding thing. A couple of other things I don't like. I mentioned before, this clip is so small, it looks silly. It looks like an afterthought or a replacement or a design error. I mean, here's the 450, much smaller knife, much larger clip. Wouldn't this look more sensible on there? Now, I think the reason they didn't do that is it would end up sitting over the, what is that called? The recess that is part of the frame lock mechanism. But got to be a solution to that. I just think that clip looks weird. Final thing I'll mention, not very many of the knives I have this. This one does. If I start closing it, there's the detent hole. And I think, oh, there we are. There's the detent hole. And I think a fully exposed detent hole like that is generally a bad idea, because that's an opportunity for it to, when it's out there passing through the air, that's an opportunity for it to fill up with, earwigs and dust and pocket lint and gradually plug up. I would prefer, most of the knives I have, this one as an example, the detent hole does not expose itself at any point. Expose itself? Didn't sound right. Anyway, it doesn't expose itself at any point during the operation, so it's protected to some extent. So, tiny thing. And because I dislike the knife so much because of its size, it's almost not worth mentioning any of the other things. So, just for fun, let's go through my internationally unknown knife rating systems. NTGK first for non-threatening gentleman's knife. Anybody want to guess how it's going to score on non-threatening gentleman's knife? Let's go through non-threatening, then gentleman's knife. So for non-threatening, the good news is I can't think of any. The bad news, the opening mechanism, you can't open it two-handed. I think a knife is less threatening if you can open it two-handed. You can't open it slowly. I think a knife, I guess you can by catching the blade, but I think that's a bad idea. So you can only flip it open, and the flip is loud. So that will draw attention, and people will go, ah, and they'll think it's a switchblade because they don't understand the difference. The appearance, it is absurdly large, and with all of the sculpting and so on, and the reverse swedge on the blade, it looks like it was designed to stab things. It's weapony looking. It is threatening looking. So as non-threatening, I'll give it, I don't know, let's be generous and say an F. As a gentleman's knife, the good news, there are a couple of things you might want to say that are nice about this, like, carbon fiber is an exotic material, but honestly, anything good that I can think of to say as a gentleman's knife is canceled by its size. Gentlemen's pocket accessories are not supposed to be the size of small sledgehammers. So the bad news as a gentleman's knife, it's huge, it's heavy, it's shallow carry, it looks like a weapon. I'm going to give it a E or an F. Does that matter? They're both failing grades, right? As a gentleman's knife. So all told as an NTGK and F. This is not an NTGK. It's not non-threatening. It's not a gentleman's knife. That doesn't mean it's not a good knife, but it's certainly not what I collect. How about my KN rating for Knife Nerd? KN for Knife Nerd rating. Now we'll get some marks. The pros are, this is a respected designer, Sinkovich. It's good materials. Carbon fiber is cool. Titanium body. S35VN is a good classic reliable steel. And the mechanism works really well. That is a reliable, secure, no-nonsense flip. So I think my knife nerd friends would like those things. The con for knife nerds is too damn big. Now, okay, I know that size isn't a knife nerd thing. It's not a knife nerd negative. In fact, a lot of knife nerds like a huge knife, but I just can't let something that is so far outside my interests score well, so I'm knocking it down. I'm going to give it a B as a knife nerd rating. And finally, the CMR, the cut myself rating, I'll give it an A. I haven't cut myself, and especially with that nice finger protection of the side flipper there, I am unlikely to cut myself. In fact, I think I'll give it an A+ as a CMR. So, in summary, this was a mistake. I don't like it, and I don't like it because it's not what I collect. That doesn't mean it's not a good knife. It is a well-made, large folder. I was going to say that I just can't figure out what it's for. Open, it's the size of a small fixed blade, but I'd use a fixed blade for heavy camp use. If I wanted a folding knife with fixed blade strength, I'd look maybe to the Umnumzan. And maybe that's what this is. This is a more available and less expensive Umnumzan. I don't know. Anyway, I was going to say that. But of course that's not true. It's obvious what it's for. It's a weapon, or at least it's designed to look like a weapon. And for my interests, no thanks. I don't carry weapons. I don't carry knives that look like weapons. In fact, I actively avoid them. I will never carry this knife. And as I said, I'll eventually sell it. But in the meantime, it's a reminder to me to pay more attention to eBay listings and not jump when I see something that I think I understand. If you have need for a huge side flipper folder, this is one, and it is undoubtedly actually quite a good one. Thanks for the sympathy. Bye-bye.